Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Uh-huh. So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 7th and 8th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish. They're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kelber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday night as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Silverline's Silver Sunday. This Sunday, March the 3rd. Yes, we are already in March. I'm your host. I am Roland Mann, and I'm here with my usual collaborators, including Mr. Mike Belcher. Say hello, Mr. Belcher.
Howdy, y'all.
Also known as that man in the mask guy. We're also here with Mr. Tom Mason, 1970s Marvel fan.
Hi, everybody.
It's the first guest we've had in a while that has not been a collaborator of Mr. Mason at some point in time.
I feel fantastic about that. It's good. It's good to meet new people.
And we are also here with our special guest tonight, Mr. Chris Nye. Say hi, Chris.
Hello, everybody.
How are you doing this evening?
Good. Really good. Very good for a Sunday night.
That's good. I am excited to talk to you. I must confess, and I think I told you as much when I met you. I got the opportunity to meet you at Pikeville, Kentucky, at Pikeville Comic Con, thanks to, of course, Mr. Belcher there, and fell in love with your work immediately, and began to ask myself, why have I not seen your work before? So one of the things I'm going to start off asking you is tell us about yourself. Tell us, how did you get into comics? What have you been doing? Where might folks know you?
Well, my most recent work, I guess, would be with Sit Comics, Binge Books, where I've been working with Mr. Ron Friends and Darren Henry and David Michelini lately is the latest writer I've been working with there. And I've hooked up with them. I guess it was about 3 years ago. But that is sort of a culmination of a long-time goal of mine, and that is to get not only into comics, but but doing it in a very traditional style, which is, it's just what I naturally do. I always tell people, my time with comics, it goes way back to childhood, but my generation kind of was in an awkward stage of transition when we got out of college. So I got out of school and at a university in spring of 1988, graduated University of South Carolina studying advertising and art with the intention of getting into commercial art, but comics was obviously in the back of my mind. But as a lot of you know, late 80s, early 90s, not only comics, but graphic design, everything was about to really start changing. So it was kind of awkward for a while. I didn't, I was submitting to DC and Marvel pretty regularly. The graphic design industry I was working in was suddenly getting computerized. So Ruby Lith was in X-Acto blades were being put aside. So, and I'm like, guys, I got none of this in university. Like overnight, suddenly they were asking for experience with software, which we were probably one of the last generations to not get that in university at all. And in the meantime, here I am submitting to comics as well. I became a newspaper illustrator and cartoonist for many, many years, which is sort of how I got proficient with the brush, because I wanted to understand that tool. Because I discovered as I got older, that was sort of the key to what it was I really wanted to do. So last submission I made to Marvel, I got a response. It was fairly nice. It was actually from Eric Larson.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So this would have been pre-image then.
Well, it was about it would have been about 1995. I was in Fort Pierce, Florida at that time, working for the Fort Pierce Tribune, which doesn't exist anymore. They merged with Stewart a few years after that, but I was an illustrator and editor there.
So not to question your timeline, but are you sure that was 95? Because Larson jumped ship from Marvel 92. Yeah, and he started doing Eric Larson started doing his own thing with Image in 92. So
yeah, I know.
Might it have been Image that you submitted to instead?
No, it was definitely Marvel. I don't know if it got passed on to him now that I think about it. He had, I don't know if he went back and helped them with some editing, but somehow it had got passed into his hands.
Mike said he did.
Yeah, I think he did just a little bit of run when they were doing that whole Heroes Reborn thing. I think they kind of leaned on him on some stuff because I remember him doing some DC stuff around that time too. So he was dipping his feet back into the corporate waters there for a little bit.
So now we should call Roland's timeline into question.
That would be, yeah, it would. Well, the thing about it is around that time, 95, 96-ish, around that time is when I just stopped reading Marvel and DCs altogether. So,
right. Well, I mean, the fact that we're trying to figure out where everyone was and who they were with, that sort of summarizes what the 90s were, that's, I think that makes our point pretty well.
Yeah.
But anyway, he had, of course, I got the formula, but he wrote a hand note on it. And essentially the bottom line was that, he told me, your pencils and work is at a professional level, you're there, but it's just out of step with the current trends. And so, at that point, I had a choice to make. And in fact, tried for a couple of months or so to see if I could adjust my style. But it just wasn't for me. I think I went out and bought some Top Cow comics or something just to see if I could do that sort of thing. But I just said, if I'm going to work this hard to get into this industry in any way, I may as well do it the way I want to do it or just not do it,
Well, if you're going to work that hard and get paid so little, right?
And that,
you might as well do what you want to do, not what somebody else wants you to do.
only newspapers might rival that low pay. So I was
really? I'm not aware of that. Yeah.
So
well, actually, that's a lie because I did work as a newspaper editor for a while, and I know how poorly they pay.
You would know. So after that, I just said, you know what, I'm just going to go back to doing what I do, and maybe one of these days things will come around again and full circle, and they did. And right around 2000, I got the Brother Destiny character out through a company called Mecha Comics, and Diamond distributed that for a couple of issues, and had a falling out with the editor who basically didn't want to pay me a cent. So I was like, well, I'm writing, editing, lettering, designing the ads, and doing the logos on the covers. So,
it doesn't sound like a falling out, though.
Yeah. So what year was this then?
That would have been right around 2000, 2001.
Okay. So your first published comic work then would be around 2000, 2001. Okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
Which,
right.
of course, as we all know, was a horrible time in comics as well. I mean.
Yeah. But I did. Chad Bowers, who works with Marvel now as a writer, was at that time also in the independent scene, and he had an opening at the Heroes Convention in Charlotte at his table. Asked if I wanted to sit in and promote my stuff with him, so I of course took it. Did that, brought the Mecha and Brother Destiny stuff with me, but just so happened that one of my big idols, Joe Sennett, was at that show. And,
nice.
Somebody took my stuff over. It's because I wasn't like I just he was royalty as far as I was concerned. Like everything I was trying to do was right out of his school. So, but someone took my work over to him and came back to the table, and they said, Chris, and I was like, what? Joe Sennett wants to see you. And I was like, what?
What did I do?
So anyway, I went over there, and he was just a terrific guy, and he was, as a lot of people know, and he was extremely down to earth, very encouraging, and he just sort of reinforced my desire to continue in the direction I was going in, and pointed out a few things to me that add to what I was doing, and
nice.
little tips and tricks sat right there and inked alongside of me, and it was amazing, and from that point on, things sort of just gradually built up over time. I did some work for an online company called Flashback Universe in the late 2000s. Worked with Chad Bowers on a couple of his independent comics. And then I transitioned to a new day job, sort of fell back and worked on my own title for a while, hoping to bring it out. Got held up with some personal stuff, but it gave me a chance to perfect some of my skills. And then Ron Fortier out of Colorado, contacted. And Ron told me he's the guy that really got me back out there. He said, you really need to get out there. And I was like, I don't know. And he said, no, just do something. He's just illustrate a book for us and just get out there. And I said, all right. Well, I mean, it's not like I'm doing anything better right now. So, but I came to really enjoy it. And of course, Ron's great to work with, and his whole company, Airship 27 is fantastic. And it kind of got me in the groove again. And I owe a lot to him for that, because he really was so encouraging. And one thing led to another, and Ron Friends, thankfully, thanks to him, a guy, Ron's the two Buscemas and John Romita are probably all, along with Joe Sennett, all my big influences. Mm-hmm. And so when Ron reached out to me, I just was thrilled. I was like, well, this is, I will work with you, no problem.
Nice.
So apparently he'd seen something and seen the style I was working in, and of course, watching him work, it's great to see someone out there that can work in that traditional way, and it's fine. People love his work. He does well, and that's encouraging to me, because it proves, the traditional way, the straightforward approach, it can still work. And so that was great to see, great to work with, and so that sort of brings me to where I am today.
Yeah, and so what we're looking at here up on the screen is the Heroes Union issue number 4, And is this one of your most recent ones?
This is the most recent one. What they're doing at Sid Comics is bring out print and digital versions. So the print version is one book of 3 stories. So this is actually the beginning of the second issue. So number 4 is number 4 digitally, but the beginning of the second issue print wise. So they're released in parts. Digital.
Are they like trades? Are they printed like in trades?
Like actual comics.
Okay.
So it's
just like a 60-page comic.
Exactly. It's why they call it a binge book. So I inked. When Ron got in touch with me regarding number 1, Sal Buscema was falling back. He was wanting to kind of ease off the workload, and I guess I'd say he's proven himself at this point. So I think he's okay. But they wanted me to, I guess, but roughly it was about half the first book that I inked, and they wanted me to do that. So they got in touch with me on that, finished that under a real tight deadline, but I really wanted to get it out there. But then they came to me afterwards and asked if I would pencil and ink the second binge book.
Wow.
Which I was like, yeah. So
twist my arm, right?
Yeah, and it's under Ron's layouts, which are just fabulous. I mean, I look at his layouts and it's like either I think I would have done that or I would have wanted to do that. It's like, yeah, that's pretty much what I would want to do. So I mean, it's really amazing. I love working with him because it's just right there in the wheelhouse I want to be in, and his layouts are so much fun. And and really, as you guys know, the layout part is honestly a lot of the work alone. So that was kind of nice where you just get a layout, use that as a guide, and just get into the drawing and the inking. So a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
So how does the process work? Because there are 2 writers on the script, and then Ron is doing the layouts, and then what can you walk me through? How it goes?
Yeah. So essentially, Darren Henry, the publisher, roughly plots these stories and just in sort of a very overall scope, lays out what he'd like to see happen and what what characters he'd like to see here and there. And a lot of the characters are his ideas, and he himself, he's a Hollywood script writer. That's what's held up the book because they had the strike, of course, recently. But he's super creative, really nice guy, and he like us likes the traditional approach to this stuff. So he does a rough plot, then it goes to the writer, in this case, David, and he takes that and refines the plot even more. And it's pretty much a Marvel approach. I actually DC or Marvel approach to writing. I'm actually good with either one. I'm comfortable either way. I think Mark Ellis, who I worked with on Lakota a couple of years ago, did it the DC way, which I was also totally fine with. But this is a little bit more the Marvel approach. And so David plots it out, gets it to Ron, who takes the page-by-page plot, does the thumbnails, which serves as my layout guide.
Right.
Okay.
So sends me the thumbnails. I take the thumbnails, and depending on how complex the layout is, I might blow them up and use them to just sort of roughly lay in where characters should be to make sure that I'm getting everything in the panel that needs to be in there as he envisioned it. And then pretty much after that, I might, have called Ron a couple of times and say, hey, what in this panel, what's going on here? Are there, do these guys need to look a certain way, or is there something happening back here that should be important, and clear things like that up. But pretty much after that, it was like, yeah, just go to town and, do what you do, and, keep the layout in mind. And then I just pencil it, ink it, and then the scans go full res scans go to Glenn Whitmore, the colorist, and then from there to the letterer and on to the eventually to print.
So you're working on paper.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and yeah, that's something else I've run into in recent years. And if there's a good thing about working at Lockheed Martin in my day job as an artist is that I've had the chance to work on the Wacom and the Apple and with the digital pens and digital inking, and I've done some comic book style work for them, and I've given that a shot, and it just doesn't. It's okay. It just doesn't quite do what I want it to do. It's close, and somebody who's better at that probably could duplicate the style better. But for me, there's just nothing like that brush hitting the paper. I just love that feel.
So how hard is to draw a tricorn hat?
Which one?
Because I was reading. Roland sent me over the PDF, and I was reading it, and because I'm an idiot, I walk through it and I go, the tricorn hat's got to be the hardest thing to draw.
It depends on the angle. I've learned there are some angles that are easier. It's like some panels you're going, does he really have to turn his head that way?
Right.
But yeah, and his whole costume, it's like, you just with guys like that, at least they don't, it's not guest starring the Jack of Hearts. So
I was just going to bring that up because the Jack of Hearts is a great costume, but you only want to draw it once. You don't want to draw it from different angles in every scene.
Yeah, but you do, you get into a bit of a rhythm with it after a while and learn, little things like, the two bands that cross his chest. You try to remember which one is on top.
It's on top.
And things like that.
I would go, if it was me, I'd go out, I'd buy a tricorn hat from some thrift shop, and then I would just take photographs of myself in every single possible angle, and I would cheat it. But then I'm not a real artist, so I would.
And you'd have those pictures right above your desk.
Yeah, that's right.
This way.
Right. So if the cops ever came over and they saw my murder board where it's just like 100 tricorn hats.
Well, Mr. Ron Friends does some great character guide sheets, so that's helpful. So there's that as well.
He also has tremendous energy. Like I can see his energy in the pages that you're doing.
Yeah.
Because I remember being younger Tom. I remember his Spider-Man stuff, and his Spider-Man stuff always had great energy. And I'm seeing that sort of same thing in the storytelling of this book.
Yeah. He has a super way of really putting power into even someone just standing there, and
right.
So it's always been the trick has always been to do accurate anatomy and yet loose enough that it feels like things are alive and moving.
Right.
And that's of course the magic formula we're all trying to capture, and it's not as easy as people may think. It's like the loose sketch may feel great and you're feeling really good, and then you tighten it up and ink it and you're like, what happened?
Because
the crawl.
Because Norm I worked on occasion with Norm Brayfogle, and Roland remembers when we say we worked with him, we didn't actually work with him, but his work would come into the office, and he used to do very, very loose pencils.
Yeah,
that would capture his energy, and then he would never tighten the pencils. Like he would go from the loose layout, the blue lines, and he would ink it right there. So he was able to retain as much of the energy as possible without having his pencils take away some of that. And so the work that he was doing became a lot more forceful and a lot more, it felt like characters were actually in motion.
Yeah.
Than in static poses.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's you go back to even like Mort Meskin and Simon and Kirby and that stuff. And, they had it. I mean, that's, Kirby was great later, but his early stuff is just like there's more there than people may think. It's incredible.
Yes. Well, I'm one of those people with the hot take that Joe Simon's inking did Kirby no favors, and so
You might be
I
right.
agree. Yeah.
because Kirby became the Kirby. I mean, you can argue that Kirby had an extra like 10 years of work behind him before he became fully Kirby without Joe Simon. But Kirby without Joe Simon, it's suddenly like, well, where's this guy been? It's like the power of Kirby really came out once Joe Simon stopped inking him. And Meskin's one of those guys who had like a really fluid style. His characters don't necessarily pose; they look like they're moving. He's got this. I don't want to say it's weird, but it looks weird compared to other superhero guys, where he's got the folds in the clothing right.
Yeah,
he's got like Eisner folds in his clothing.
Yeah. Milton Caniff too.
Yes,
another one who. In fact, years ago when I had the privilege of talking to John Romita Sr., my first favorite artist on the phone, I had to bring up Milton Caniff because I knew it would get him going. And it did, and I just loved it. But yeah, that's another one that could do that. And like you said, the folds of the clothing. I mean, they look like they're alive. It's
because I remember I saw my first couple of Mort Meskin stories when I was a kid. They're being reprinted in those. And when DC went to the 48 or 64 page book, they started reprinting some Meskin stuff. And my first thought was, how come he isn't better known? And it's mostly because he never got on a book that had like a popular long-standing run. It's mostly cowboys and stuff like that.
That's
but
right.
he's terrific. He's really fantastic. And every time I see one of his stories, I belong to a couple of Facebook groups, and when they're not arguing about stupid crap, they're posting. Somebody will post a Meskin page or whatever, and I'll just sit there and I'll say, "You guys fight about who did what or whatever, but I'm going to stare at this Meskin page for the rest of the day."
Yeah. I hate to see them get into debates about stuff like that, even the Lee versus Kirby stuff.
Oh, I hate those.
No, because
let's just enjoy all of it,
and be glad we have it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love it because there's another guy who works in the traditional style who doesn't. I mean, because the style is sort of out of vogue from Marvel and DC now, but Alex Saviuk. One of those. He's one of those I put in the Ron Friends category where he has really good traditional comic style, but he's also got a lot of energy in his work.
Yes.
And and through no fault of his own, he sort of let that peter out when he was doing the Spider-Man comic strip because nobody was going to read that. But I would much rather see. He posts a bunch of his commissions online every now and then, and I look at that stuff and I just go, man, why? Somebody should just call this guy.
Yeah, well, he's Alex is still. I know this because he's fairly local to me now, and I see him at some of the local shows. He's doing the Phantom, pretty regular. I want to say it's a French book now.
Okay, because the daily strip is Mike Manley, I think.
The Phantom Mike Daily.
Yeah, the Phantom comics.
So I think Alex still doing the Spider-Man daily, but he's drawing the Phantom. Don't hold me to it being French, but it's an international book,
right? Because then this baffles me too, because the Phantom is apparently still popular in Europe and really popular in Australia, and they still make new stuff that never comes over here.
Yeah,
that's wild, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, because I
think that people are making comic books not here, and we don't get to see them.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, because frankly, Americans would never buy it anyway if it came over here. It's the thing. It's the thing you have to look for when you go to a foreign country. It's like, oh yeah, what comics do you have over here that I should know about that I never see?
Yeah.
That's why when I travel, I take a second suitcase. Give me some of these things.
Yeah, Europe and South America both are they do some great traditional work that just is fantastic. I know when my wife and I were in France years ago, and we stopped at a bookstore, and I went to look at the comics just sitting there, and they were all, it was all traditional inking. It was beautiful, just beautiful stuff. I mean,
I went years ago. I went to the comic convention in Grenoble, France, and I just and because I'm an idiot, I didn't know any of this stuff existed. I mean, I I knew they're European comics. I knew they were publishing graphic albums, but I thought it was basically just Asterix and Lucky Luke. I didn't realize it was just, I thought it was like one or two things, and I don't really care about that stuff. But then you go over there, and it's like thousands of things, and it's you don't even have enough money on hand to get the things that you want to get, and it's an incredible body of work.
Yeah,
definitely.
It's an entirely a different conversation of how, I think anyway, of how comics are a uniquely created American art form, and yet they are so much more popular in other countries than they are here.
Yes, that's all. I mean, that's also true with other things as well, where stuff that feels uniquely American, whether it's food or comics or music or whatever, is way more popular elsewhere.
Well, of course, French fries are not really French.
Well, neither is French. Neither is French toast.
Yeah, imagine that.
Yeah, I mean, being a big old classic jazz fanatic, that's what happened with jazz. The guys went over to France in the 50s and 60s because that's where they were appreciated.
Right.
So, yeah, you see that phenomenon a lot.
Same thing with that stupid Jerry Lewis, where he couldn't be. He was not popular in America, and then he goes over to France, and they make him like a king or something.
Yeah.
And there's a wide appreciation for different genres too. It's not so narrow. Like the Western is still really appreciated there, and it's South America as well.
That's the same thing with the Japanese manga. I mean, they have comics about baseball, and they have comics about cooking, and they have comics
golf.
About others that golf. It's like, well, okay, but and it's not like this weird outlier stuff. It's hugely popular over there, and you try to say that one of the most popular comics in Japan is about golf, and Americans will just look at you like, what are you even talking about?
Right, yeah,
we don't even watch golf on TV, and it moves.
No. But I have a cousin who goes to one of the tournaments every year because it's local, and she gets to be one of those flag movers or something. I don't know. She does something. She works there essentially. So she's like, oh, the Masters or whatever it is. It might be the Masters. I don't remember.
Is it Augusta?
No, because she lives in Memphis. Which one's in Memphis?
Oh, you're asking the wrong guy.
Yeah, I don't know either. So
I'm more of a miniature golf guy.
Well, we call it putt-putt.
But and and Chris, by the way, we'll get back to you in a minute. But
take your time.
The thing is that saying that you love golf and you're just going to be the person who takes the flag out of the hole. I mean, what kind of job is that?
I don't have any idea. She's my cousin though, so.
Right. Well, okay.
So I still love her.
Yes.
But I don't. She's like, I'm at the 18th hole this year, and I'm like, okay. The only thing I know is that's the last one. Is that a good thing?
But no offense to your cousin, but you could train some kind of animal to take the flag out.
You could,
and it make
I would watch a monkey do it.
If you had a monkey, I would watch golf. If you had a monkey taking the flag out, I would definitely watch every golf match possible. There. Now we can go back to Chris. Now I'm done.
So Mike, I know that you were responsible for getting Chris to go to Pikeville. How did you become aware of Chris, his work, and how did all that happen?
Well, we became friends on Facebook, and I guess we became the members of the Mutual Appreciation Society. We definitely could appreciate each other's work and our approach. And Chris's style, as he said, he's in that classically Marvel, style that I just, I'm the DC guy, but basically I'm the DC because Marvel doesn't look like that anymore.
Right.
I mean, because that Buscema, that whole, period of time, that classic Marvel style of the 70s and 80s, just hit me. It just hit me hard. And when I saw Chris put his stamp on it, I just love it, and like I said, we just, it's just one of those things that we went back and forth the commentary on Facebook and became friends, and he's got a pinup in Man the Mask #3.
Oh, there we go.
Because I was actually trying to search for it, but I'm on my laptop, and so I couldn't find it. and I would have shown it, but it definitely is a high point of the pinups that I've gotten.
Nice.
I certainly appreciated his take on 'em.
Oh,
Well, I
thanks.
still
But and I tried to get him for Pikeville for years,
yeah.
and last year when he said yes, I was quite a happy man.
There you go.
Cool. So Chris, where are you geographically? I don't need your mailing address, but geographically, where are you?
I am in a town called Simpsonville, South Carolina, which is a suburb of Greenville, South Carolina, which is in the northwest corner of the state. I'm actually from Columbia originally, the capital city,
Okay.
which is about 2 hours south of here. Grew up there and then spent time, like I say, in South Florida, North Carolina, and Atlanta. So in other words, southeast corner of this continent, I've pretty much got covered. So
Nice.
Yeah.
Because my geography is terrible, but basically all those states are within like 2 hours of each other, aren't they? Like you can sort of be.
Well, it depends.
I was going to say South Florida is like not close to anybody.
I remember
you're down there in the dangly part.
That's right. The drives to South Florida were, it's like
It takes 8 hours just to get out of Florida from
it's
South Florida.
a fast clip until you get past Jacksonville for about an hour, and then you're like, when am I going to get there?
Yeah. So Florida's it's a long state, and you can just I know it takes me 4 hours. Well, no, okay, I'm an hour closer now since my move. It takes me 3 hours just to get out of the state going north, and I'm in the sort of the central northern part of the state.
Have you met California, Roland?
I actually have, yeah.
You can almost drive all day and not be out of California.
Yeah, but Californians don't drive anywhere because it takes them 3 hours just to get 5 miles.
Well, well, somebody's driving because the freeway is always crowded.
I tell people, Tom, I was always very, very fortunate when I was in California because I was always going against the flow.
Yes.
Because I lived in Northridge, and I either went to Calabasas or to Westlake. And that meant I was going out of town while everybody else was coming in town.
Yes.
And then in the end of the day, I'm going into town when everybody else was going out of town. So I was always really rare exceptions, going to the airport or something like that. But I was always very lucky. I didn't see a whole lot of the California traffic.
It's different now. It's awful in both directions.
Is it really? Oh,
yeah.
I remember being in San Diego, and I was going to drive up to LA just to see it. And
oh, you poor man.
I got to the exit of the interstate, and I don't know how I did it, but I managed to do a U-turn back to where I was.
Like, yeah, that's enough. I've seen enough.
I was like, I know.
Well, Chris, I can tell you didn't miss much.
I would say he missed everything.
Oh yeah, well, of course you would,
because you haven't been back, right?
I have not.
Yeah, see.
Now, so he said he was going to LA. So San Diego, the Comic Con, and that San Diego area, awesome, fantastic. Yeah. I love that little area of San Diego. That's all I know, but I love that little area of San Diego. Awesome.
Yeah. Are you coming this year, Roland?
No.
All right.
I hope to try to come next year. I just got my my thing from the convention that I need to re-up. You have to re-up every so often.
Yeah, every 3 years you got to prove that you're still in the comic business.
Yeah, you got to prove you're still alive, I think. David Ace Gutierrez says, love the work, Chris.
Oh, there we go.
So, thanks, Dave.
Thank you, David. Dave, good to see you here. Good to see you here tonight. Thank you for hanging out with us. Dave's one of our usuals, hangs out with us. So I've still got the Heroes Union up on the screen. So so you mentioned that. Mike, did you have any questions? I'm sorry.
The only question that I have of Chris, later on, we talked to Pikeville. He was working on his own thing. I'm very curious for the future for Chris's project. So we can get into that later if you want to, or now.
No, because I'm a big believer in doing your own thing.
Me too.
Because that's where the freedom and the creativity. I mean, it may never, nothing. Who knows what sells or what people like or whatever. But the idea of just doing your own stuff is really satisfying and fulfilling.
more than anything what I really want to do. That's another thing I loved about Mike's work was not only the unique style, which suits Mike's character so well, but the fact that you've got control of the whole vision, which I just love that. That's what. I honestly, the dream of applying for the big boys anymore, that's long since passed. And I really, I just not, unless, now if they come to, anyone was ever to come to me and say, hey, we want you to take us back.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hold my breath starting right now.
Right. Yeah. Don't do that. We'd like to see you at the next show.
And that's interesting. That's an interesting idea because it seems like with DC doing several different kinds of approaches to their work, and Marvel too. Because I mean, DC did like a Dinosaur Justice League, and DC has done Wonder Woman 77, and they did Batman 66. It seems like somebody would come along and say, we should do a 4-issue miniseries of 1970s DC or early 80s DC, and see how that plays out, and just commit to 4 issues or whatever. Because I bet that would satisfy the people who miss those things, and that might attract new people. Oh man, look! If they gave me the classic Avengers lineup, in a classic Avengers style, man, I would. I realize we're live, and I realize that what I'm about to say, I haven't said in years. I would actually buy a new Marvel comic off the stands. Right, and I don't need. The thing is, because I don't need the company to change its entire direction. No, just give me that 4-issue thing. Just like Avengers 1959 or whatever, just give me 4 issues or 6 issues, and then collect it in a big book, and I'm happy. I'll be there with my money. Yep, got a couple comments here. Your California bashing notwithstanding, Roland. Now, David, I have to say this is the first day I went off on a tangent, and I apologize to you and your state. Usually, Roland doesn't alienate his viewers. That's right. That's true. Pops, hey Pops, good to see you here. So Pops asked, Chris, do you have a Facebook or an Instagram that folks can find you and follow you and see your work? Because it needs to be seen.
Yep, both of those exist, and there's always chrisnyeart.com, which is my website. Art. Okay. Yeah, very, very easy. I refuse to let that domain name go. I grabbed it a few years ago, so just renewed it. So chrisnyeart.com, and you'll find me on both of those, Facebook and Instagram. And do you take commissions? Actually, my plans were to try to open up for commissions again sometime this year. With the personal stuff going on, I kind of got that on hold at the moment, but I'm hopeful sometime by the summer, if things go well, I'd like to start up with that. And continue to do it. Yeah, for sure. But to answer Mike's question, I've actually plotted like 4 different possible titles and have written them out, and I'm just, it's become therapy for me, and I'm just hammering them out, and whichever one I like. I think you're doing it right, Mike. I think that's the way to go, is to perfect one character that you can tell different types of stories through, so that you can focus on one, especially given time constraints. So, but I would love to, the reason I want to write it as well is, we talked about the 70s a lot, and basically the comics I love are from 1933 to say mid 80s at the latest. And because I think, I was telling Lloyd Smith, who runs a really great blog, that I've just always had this theory that, comic books basically were, on a very basic level, were done the same way for decades, going back to the 30s. Right. Just the very basic rules of what you did and didn't do. And I thought those were ideal. And at some point it changed, but it seems to me from the 30s to the 70s, early 80s, there was a progression of perfecting that art form. And so when you came into writers like Conway, Wayne, Wolfman, Goodwin, Gerber, all those guys, Jerry Conway, all those guys, that style of writing is what I want to try to grab onto, because it just seems to me they really perfected the art of balancing adult level writing with entertainment that anyone can pick up and read and enjoy.
Yeah.
And that is a magic formula that we don't have now as much.
Well, and they were also
sitcoms. They're trying to grab that, and I really think that's something that's been kind of lost. And it's not easy, as I'm finding out. I mean, some of those guys, as you know, around 1978, 79, the number of ads in a comic book were probably at an all-time high. So you had about 17 pages to and pace and tell a story, and they did it. I mean, I was just looking at one the other day. I'm trying to figure out, as I'm writing this stuff, how they did this. I mean, in 17 pages.
Well, I think they understood the limitations of the format, which is we're gonna stop you at 17, regardless of where you are.
Yeah,
that's
so
right.
You might want to finish up your story, and so that's and that's by opening up the comic books to 22 pages, 24 pages, 32 pages, or whatever. It allows the storytelling to sort of compress, to sort of expand itself.
Yeah,
and then you get it's sort of like a Stephen King book. His early books are fairly thin, and then his later books are hugely fat. And the Star Wars movie, the first one is fairly lean, and the other Star Wars movies are like 4 hours. And so it's just they expand to fill available space. And I think the 17-page thing is it sounds constricting, but it also sounds like fun. Like it's like, I want to try to fit this, an entire comic book story where I fight the villain, I defeat the villain, I solve my personal issues, whatever, and on page 17 I'm out.
Yeah.
And even if it's, say, a part one of a two-parter,
right?
Even within that part one, there are arcs that are being completed. Like they're still getting something done.
Right.
It's just it's an art unto itself, and it's something I really want to try to dip into and understand. I mean, it's a great thing they did.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris Pop said it's a network thing. We promote what people like you do, so that's why he wanted to have your Facebook and Instagram and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you.
David A. Scudrez also says, read the big boys comments. It seems like indie is the way to go. And David would know. He's an avid reader of all kinds of stuff. He says the big two just feel like cheap R&D for film and TV these days, which is very unfortunate. Because these guys, arguably have all of the power behind them, all of the muscle behind them, and yet, I don't meet too many people in my circles who are Marvel zombies like I used to be, or big. Oh, I'm a big DC fan, like they we used to have. So
I think this can get me in trouble now, but I think that because of the corporatization of Marvel and DC, the people who are actually making the comics now, there's a higher human resources factor if you're wrong.
Right.
Like in the old days, if Marvel and DC were wrong, they would just cancel the books and move on. They'd come up with new books. Yeah. And now it seems like if you take a chance on something in Marvel and DC, because they're Disney, because they're Warner Brothers Discovery, the stakes seem a little bit higher. And if they're having layoffs or whatever, you'll always be known as, oh, you're the guy who did the
the failed book.
Liked. How'd you go? So the risk of your personal career is greater, and
you may be right, and that's too bad. I think
it is, because one of the reasons I like the indie comics, both the good ones and the bad ones, is because you can see these people are really trying. Yep. Like this is the thing that's in my head, and I cannot wait to get it out on paper. And sometimes, the reason why I love the indie comics is sometimes you find the gold thing.
Yep.
That's in there, and that's what I love about comics. I love it's the same thing I loved about Marvel and DC. Right. They published so many comics in the 70s that, I know what a Batman comic is. I know what a Fantastic Four comic is, but the Master of Kung Fu comic, or the Werewolf by Night comic, or the the Creeper or whatever,
who the heck is Son of Satan?
Right. That's all that weird stuff. What? All that weird stuff that's around the crusty edges of the universes. That's the stuff that really fascinates me.
Yeah.
But they had as wild as some of that stuff sounds, they had a discipline to what they were doing though. I mean, they were maybe some self-imposed rules and maybe editorial, I don't know, but they really that perfected that under some discipline, I think. Marv Wolfman had a great column years ago in his old What the column he used to have on, and somebody asked him what had happened in the 90s where we lost all that, and he said something that I've always remembered. I thought was really nice. He said, he reminded, first of all, people who worked in the 70s and 80s went back earlier before that and had connections to people from decades before. And he said, we always felt like we were stewards of these characters and these stories. We had some creative freedom, but we also had a respect for what had come before. And we knew this going over here was a little bit too far and that you just didn't do that. But within this range, if you stuck to that range, there was a lot of freedom in there to do what you want and yet respect your readers at the same time. So, it was an interesting comment by him, and I think it said a lot.
Well, I remember one time, and this goes to when we were talking to when we were at Malibu, talking to Marvel editors about one of the crossover things that we're doing. And I think Mark Grunwald was the one who said this. Don't hold me to this, but he was talking about the thing about if I lend my character to you, he goes, it's like me handing you my toy. Okay, this is my toy. You can play with it. You can do anything you want to while you're playing with it, right? But when you give it back to me, I want you to give it back to me in the exact same condition that I'm giving it to you in.
Right.
I don't want him to have a different cape. I don't want him to have a cape. I don't want you to take somebody else's arm and stick it on him.
Although I would do that.
Yeah. But when you're done, you got to give it back to me in the same condition to which I gave him to you in it. So you can play with him, right? But you got to return him to me.
Well, those are 70s and 80s sitcom rules too, which is at the end of the sitcom, your character has learned something new, but they're not really changed.
Yeah,
and
Gilligan can't get off the island.
That's right, because your show's over, and your main, in general, your main character is not going to get killed,
right?
Because it's the start of the show,
right?
Yeah, so, and if you're a new viewer, you seeing the show for the first time, you still come away with a good idea of who these characters are. That's another trick.
I think it was Shooter who said you got to remember that every issue is somebody's first
issue.
That's right.
And so you got to go in with that sort of understanding, which is you can still be confusing. You can still have a story that goes all over the place, but you got to understand that the kid who's picking this up for the first time needs to get something out of it so that he can come back.
Yeah. Yeah. He needs to know Spider-Man is Spider-Man and he's in New York City.
Right.
He doesn't need to go. He doesn't need to wonder, well, who is this guy? Right.
Yeah.
David Ace Gutierrez says indie comics are the solo punk efforts.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
They're almost like response comics to what Marvel and DC and the others are doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also there's to me anyway, there's no reason for somebody to bang their head against the wall and say, well, I can't get work at Marvel or DC, because nowadays, if you have the chops, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
There are tons of, you can make your own comic, you can put your own comic online, you can make a comic for the phone, you can do anything. And there isn't really a gatekeeper other than your own sort of, fear or lack of money. Or lack of money, because lack of money is a huge thing too.
Lack of money is a huge thing, yeah. Lack of money, a lack of know-how sometimes. You're like, well, I don't know how to put my stuff on the internet.
Right.
Okay, well, lots of people do.
Although the internet's been around for 30, 40 years, so it's not new technology.
No, it's not. And of course, one of the things I always like to say when someone says, I don't know how to do this, I said, I bet YouTube does.
Right.
True.
Yeah. And if you have kids, I bet they do.
That's right. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely right. Cassisi Harris says, I like that. Every issue is somebody's first issue. Noted. Yeah, absolutely, Cassisi. Yeah. And one of the things I say in my class, Cassisi, you might remember this, is that whenever I see a student say, I read this comic and I was confused, and I say, okay, well then tell me what you're confused about. And if it was just the story that confused, like as Tom noted, if it's just a story that, well, that's fine. That was the story elements. But if they're like, I don't know who this character was, I don't know who his powers were, I say, okay, well then that's bad writing, right? Yeah. That's not your fault. Because a lot of my students, they'll read something and they feel, well, I just don't know how to read comics. I don't understand. And I'm like, no, that's not your fault. That's the fault of bad comic writing.
Because I'll follow a confusing story if I've been dropped into something,
and if it's interesting, yes.
And if it's interesting, but if I like the character,
yes,
then I want to see how they get out of this confusing story.
Yeah.
And so it's for me, it's the character and the writing and the art, because I assume if I like all of those things and I can trust the story, that the confusing part of the story will eventually resolve itself.
Yeah. And also, I think of the example when I was out of San Diego a few years ago. I picked up. You can walk by and people will hand you stuff, free stuff.
Right.
I got 2 free comics. One of them was from DC, and one of them was from Panini. The fact that I cannot remember the Panini title is going to illustrate my point. The DC title was Kentucky Fried Chicken comic. I can't remember the exact name.
With the Colonel Sanders.
Colonel Sanders, yeah. And it was brilliant. It was great. It was fantastic. It was funny, right? I'm trying to think. The writer was Tony Bedard, I think. But it was funny. I laughed throughout it. It was funny. It was maybe Colonel Sanders' Core or something like that. Kind of making.
Is there Clubhouse a bucket?
I don't know that.
Yes.
But the other one I read, right? And look, I've read a lot of comics. So the other one I read, I finished it. I'm like, I don't know who this character's name is. I don't even know his name. His name was not even used throughout the entire story. So I at the very end, I'm like, what was this guy's name? Don't know. Have no idea what he was doing, right? Yeah, he went and fought some stuff, but I'm like, why is he fighting? What's the point?
Also, you shouldn't name your company Panini after a sandwich press. Because
well, there was certainly no meat in that comic.
No, there we go. Right, I think we pissed off the whole internet now.
Right,
or maybe it's just me.
So Chris, can folks find you at comic conventions? What shows do you go
where do
to?
you go?
We know you went to Pikeville last year, but where else what are your usual haunts? Where can people find you and get autographs from you?
Well, hopefully more to come. That was actually my first one since Heroes Convention many years earlier. So
get out of here.
So that's yeah. So I am trying to get out there more. I want to get some more invites like I got from Mike, and that's why I appreciated Mike's invites so much, because it got me out there again.
Talk to me after the show. I know a guy we might reach out to.
But yeah, I really enjoy it. I mean, it was great coming to Pikeville, and I had forgotten how nice it was just interacting and reminding yourself, there's other guys like you out there, believe it or not. So,
well, one of the things, I mean, this is anecdotal because it's just stuff I've seen, but the guys who are working traditionally on paper, they get a lot more attention because
there's stuff to look at and hold.
There's stuff to look at, and it's not on the screen. You can actually see the stuff. Like
I can flip through your portfolio and look at. Oh, look, you got white out here. Why do you have white out there?
Right. Or here's how the lettering fit in, or here's how this fit in, or here's whatever. And I think I love. And again, I understand I'm an old person, but I love looking through original art.
I do too.
And I've seen kids who love that too. So maybe it's not just me, but seeing it for real makes it real. Where seeing it on screen doesn't necessarily. I can read it when it's on screen, but if I'm in person and I'm at a show, I really like to see it on the board.
Yeah. And, Tommy and I did a store signing yesterday for Trump's #1, which, by the way, kids, you can pick up at your local comic shop. It's out on stands today. And Tommy brought a bunch of art with him, but that was the thing. People would come up and see us, and they would just start flipping through his pages, right? No. Tom, you might have heard him talking about it. He found like 80 pages stuck in his garage.
Oh yeah,
he was cleaning up his garage, and he's like, "What are these?" And he found like 80 pages. He had a bunch of Kyle Holt's Nightman pages.
Yeah. Also, no offense to Tommy, but that sounds like a dumb idea to keep 80 pages of original comic book art in your garage.
Have you met Tommy?
I have met him once or twice.
We love you, Tommy. Miss you tonight, man.
and he's not here, and he's also bigger than me, so he's like one punch Tommy. But I'll go out on the limb.
Yeah. Cassisi has a question, Chris. He says, can you think of a comic that showcases non-traditional art styles, yet still embodies the discipline that is shown in a comic of traditional art style?
Nope, I would be at a loss there for sure. But I think because the reason I say that is it kind of goes hand in hand in a way, like it's traditional because of the discipline involved. So at least from what I've seen, and admittedly I haven't seen everything that's out there because there's a lot, and I'm sure there's somebody doing something very well a certain way that I wouldn't do it, but if it works for them, that's, I always say the more the merrier. If we have a gazillion different approaches and it's working for somebody, that's all good. But the thing you'll see is someone sitting at a table on a page, they drop a pencil to the floor and they lean to pick it up. And this action takes 3 pages to happen. And, and meanwhile, there's, 5 words here or there maybe. And then you're halfway through the book. And
I know that comic.
I've seen that comic.
Probably. And, it's just not my thing. It's what they call decompressed storytelling.
Right.
Okay, but that's not what I'm after. And if that's working for some people, that's more power to them. But I hope that there's room out there for that action taking place within one panel, if that many. So, I would like to see just room on the stands for everything is all I'm asking for.
Yeah.
So where can we buy your comics?
Yeah.
Where
I want to know because the only thing I was able to see, Chris, was the digital comics. So
that's all.
I'm traditional enough that I'm like, I get it, I see them, but I want to buy it and hold it in my hands. And so where can we do that?
The hope is what we're hoping, and as I say, the Hollywood writer strike delayed Sid Comics production for a while, but it's revving up again. So I have got 20 more pages sitting right here to ink on this second binge book issue.
So sure the hold up.
Get going.
So, apparently.
Quit wasting your time with me. Get over there.
So as soon as I get the green light, I'm going to knock those out. And the idea is that this will get back to print like the first binge book did. So probably what's going to happen, though, is they're going to release part 5 and 6 digitally, and then they'll be collected in a print book. And hopefully, Sid Comics is rolling right now. They have a lot of stuff they're doing, but it gets distributed to comic shops normally. And
So, but the ones that are distributed are called binge books.
That's right. This particular title, this Heroes Union. So there's a regular Blue Baron comic. But
I caught myself looking for that and I couldn't find it.
Yeah, I think, as I say, production got held up a bit, but they're rolling again. So they got a lot of stuff and a lot of varieties, stuff in an old Archie style. You've got the classic superhero style stuff that I'm working on, and other genres too. So. They're being distributed to comic shops. In fact, the one here in Greenville carries them, I know. So it should be. And then you can always go online to their website and find out.
Okay, so you can order them from the website. I know you can order the digital stuff, but I didn't see any of the print stuff there. But I may just
not presently, but in the past, and hopefully again in the future. So
if we keep checking out the website.
Yeah, and the Sid Comics' Facebook page is particularly and they're on Twitter as well. So
nice, very cool. Cassisi says thank you.
Well, Cassisi, you're very welcome.
All right, guys. Well, my clock shows me that we have run our hour. You guys have any other questions that you just dying to ask Chris that we didn't ask?
No, I think
Mike?
it's great to meet you, Chris. I love looking at the art. I loved reading the issue that was posted up. And Roland also sent out your the PDF of your portfolio with your pencils in it, which was great to look at too.
Yeah,
because I can really see the strong and I don't know how to pronounce his name, so I'll just say Buscema.
Yeah,
I can see a Buscema influence. I can see sort of a little bit of Don Heck here and there, and it's just it makes my heart go pitter patter when I see that stuff. So
Thanks. Yeah, it's funny the subconscious influences that will come up, but that's that's great. That's great.
So good luck, and when you get another issue out, when this issue comes out, why don't we hit up Roland again and bring you back?
Get you back. Yeah. Love that.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
That'd be great.
Sounds
and
good.
then go to wherever convention Roland recommends because he knows things.
yeah. Mr. David A. Gutierrez says, "Thank you. Looking forward to this." Thank you.
David's got money, so he'll spend it.
Yes. Yeah. So, David, thank you for hanging out with us again on this Sunday night. We appreciate seeing you here and in your comments. Chris, any final thoughts or comments from you?
Nope, just keep an eye out and hope to have more stuff coming out in one form or another. Definitely, and we'll save the industry.
Sounds good to me.
Exactly.
Hey.
All right. So, as a reminder to all of you out there, we are running our crowdfunder. We've got 1 day to go, and someone asked me, "Why are you ending it on a Monday?" And I'm going to tell you because I misread my calendar. That is the only reason it's ending on a Monday and not tonight. Remember that the Fund My Comic exclusive are these foil covers. It is not a flip book. This is just my proof of what these foils are going to look like. So not a flip book, but these are just some gorgeous foils. So, but the only way you can get this is if you back the crowdfunder. So
you
be
keep
sure
flipping it though.
I want them to see both. I want them to see both covers. Not a flip book. Not a flip book. Just I could do this, I guess.
There you
but
go.
that looks like a flip book still.
It does. It's the way around it.
Yeah. So I don't. I hate for Ron Fortier to get on here and say, "Hey, you didn't show mine." Well, okay, here it is. So get over there and back. There's still 1 day. I guess 24 hours left to go. I think it ends at 8:45 tomorrow night. On Tuesday, that Silverline show on Tuesday, you're gonna have special guest. Tom, you know this guy. Special guest Randy Ronaldo.
Oh, that guy's great.
Yep. Fantastic. Tom, I think you're actually the guy who introduced me to Randy Ronaldo back in the early 90s.
He was one of the first of the guys who was making his own comic books outside of everybody else and doing like one comic a year because he had a day job and he had a family or whatever. But every one that comes out, it comes out like clockwork, and they're terrific. If you like sort of I know this is sort of a pejorative, but it's not. It's like an old-fashioned Terry and the Pirates kind of adventure comic.
They're awesome.
In the style of Kniff from the 30s and 40s.
Yep.
It's fantastic. It really is. It's great.
Yes.
Rob Haynes rules.
Rob,
yes.
He's the. Go ahead, Tom.
And Randy is like another one of those guys who's like the greatest guy.
Yes.
I see him every year at San Diego. He's the first booth I go to, and I just say, "What's the new thing?" And we settle up, we chat for a little while, and then it's the first comic I read at the show. So,
well, I can remember 2 recommendations from you to this day. It might have been more, but these are the 2 I remember was Rob Haynes by Randy Ronaldo and Jeff Smith's Bone. You came up to me, I think it was probably that same show, and said issue 5 or 6 was out of Bone. You need to go get this now.
Yeah.
So
Bone doesn't look like the kind of comic that we would be interested in.
It does not, but it is. But I love it.
Yeah, it's like the greatest sort of pastiche of Lord of the Rings type fantasy stuff.
Yes.
Only with little funny guys and cows.
Well, I am now, of course, as I'm guessing, some of you may be. I am now the proud owner of I think all the trade papers on my my bookshelf.
Oh, there you go.
So, and that's Tuesday. Wednesday, they're going to have a show, but I don't have any information here, so I don't know what they're going to do Wednesday. This next Sunday, we're going to be back with origin stories. Why did we want to make comics? We're going to talk, me and Mike and Tom, whoever else happens to join us here. We're going to talk about why we wanted to make comics and how we went about making that happen. All that happens next week this time.
Oh, I'll be the cranky guy then, because I never wanted to make comics. I never started out wanting to do that.
Save that for next week.
There's your teaser.
Yeah. Come back, find out why Tom didn't want to make comics.
I made like 1,000 comics, and I didn't really set out to do that at all. So.
All right, Chris, hang out, chat with us afterwards. But you guys know what time it is. As we get out of here, we like to say, there it is. Make mine Silverline. Good night, everyone.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Paul Kupperberg. Make mine Silverline.